Build connections with the teachers and with the service providers, with your child, because children can tell you what they need, but sometimes they need someone to help speak what they need to the other people, like their teachers and to their service providers. So once you have that relationship with your child, then you can extend that relationship to the teachers and other people who work with your child. And through that, you'll have this village of people who have a foundation of relationship that are working together to accomplish what you set out to do for your child, what needs to be done for your child based on what they need. As a teacher, sometimes the things that I had as rewards in my classroom were not at all interesting to the students who were in the classroom. Like, I needed some incentives that were going to get them to do what I need them to do. And in order to do that, I had to partner with their parents. And so I would say, hey mom, hey dad, you have this thing that you do with your child all the time and they really enjoy that. Can I get you to work with me? I need your child to do X in the classroom, and I will take, daily notes or write whatever to make sure that they're doing one. And can you reward them with that thing? Can you hold off on rewarding them until they've met that requirement for the classroom? Can we work together in that way? So many times when I went to parents like that, they were more than happy to work with me because they want the best for their child too. And so that's what I mean by collaboration. Sometimes as a parent and as a teacher, you have to come to the table and you have to figure out what it is that needs to be done, and you have to work together to make it happen. So you can do that though when you have open lines of communication and you have a relationship with each other. That's what we mean when we're talking about collaboration. I want to welcome you for this presentation of the Foundations of Special Education Advocacy. This is a course that is designed for parents, and the purpose of this course today is to give you some tools that you can use, some real hands-on stuff that you can put into practice like right now to help you get the services that you need for your child. I don't know where you are in the world, so I'm not even sure if I should say good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, but wherever you are, welcome. All right, so for those of you who don't know me, let us get acquainted. My name is Dr. Rolanda Fabian. I am very family oriented. I'm a mom and a wife, and I love spending time with my family and making sure that they are getting what they need, probably very much like you. I am a military veteran. That's a little known fact about me. I spent 8 years in the U.S. military as I was in the Army first, and then I transitioned over to the Army National Guard. And so I did that for the first 8 years before I even went to college. The Army kind of helped me segue into what I really wanted to do. And so I transitioned into civilian life and went to school, and I studied psychology and counseling, but I really landed in education, special education to be exact. So I went back to school to get my certificates and certifications and my doctorate in teaching and learning, and here I am today. I'm a fierce advocate of underrepresented and marginalized people, making sure that they have equitable access to the things that everybody else has. I want to make sure that people who are minorities or people with disabilities and other underrepresented people have what they need to be successful in this world. That's why I chose to do this work and to go into the education field. I also have spent over 20 years as a special education teacher and administrator, and now the work that I do focuses more on parents and helping them to learn to advocate for themselves and for their children, which is actually how Bright Idea came to be. So Bright Idea is a company that I started, and I basically took everything that I learned through formal education and through working in the school system, and I put that into the Bright Idea system. And what Bright Idea is, we teach parents who have children with special needs how to advocate for their child's services. Many times special education goes great, but there are times when it doesn't. And then I found in my work that parents didn't know what to do when those times happened. So we became a resource and a support to those parents. And now, as a way to really empower them, where we started taking the things that teachers used to learn, we used to teach teachers, and we teach it to parents. And that way, parents are coming to the table during their meetings and they're as knowledgeable, they're as informed, they're as empowered so that they can work better to meet the needs of those students. We recently expanded Bright Idea to start working with organizations and schools and other community partners. But the heart of what we do has always been for the parents. And so that is why we focus a lot of what we do on educating and empowering parents. Okay, so now that you know a little bit about me, let me tell you what it is that we're going to be doing today. Today's training is what I hope that you will have when you finish this training is you will have that opening assessment where you are able to gauge just where you are, where your understanding is when it relates to special education. Then I want to talk to you about definitions because you probably know, just like I do, you've been in meetings and in the beginning, some of this stuff just goes right over your head. I want to be sure that while we're here together during this training, that you are clear on what I'm saying. So I'm going to give you some definitions before we even get started. So as I use the terms, you're familiar with what I'm talking about. I'm also going to talk with you about those advocacy strategies. So that is the reason that you came here, and I'm going to give you 4 tools today that you can put into your toolbox and put into practice so you can start seeing a change in how you maneuver and how you work around the school system to meet the needs of your child. Then I'm also going to give you a post assessment. So now that we've taken the pre assessment, you know where you are. I'm going to give you a post assessment so you can really gauge where you are. And after that, depending on what you need, I'm going to talk to you about a special offer that we have. Okay, so I was trying to move my screen so that I could be out of the way of the content that you're about to see, but I wasn't able to do that. But I promise you, I'll talk you through whatever it is that you're going to miss. What we want to do first, before I even get into the definitions or anything, let me go ahead and give you your pre-assessment. I'm going to ask you a series of 5 questions. They're just true, false statements, give you a chance to answer them, and then we're going to talk about the answers to those after we're done, and then we'll move into our training. Okay? Before we get started, go ahead and get your pencil. Remember, I told you to get some pencil. If you had the workbook, you can use your workbook. And you're going to want to write your answers down so you can gauge yourself as we go. And listen, be honest because there's no one watching this. It's only you. It's just between you and you yourself and you. So make sure that you're getting your answers down and being honest with yourself so you can get a clear gauge on where you are because that is how we'll determine how we can get you where you need to be. Okay? All right. So the first question. True or false? There are only 2 types of special education plans. Is that true or is that false? Go ahead and write your answer on your paper. Give you a couple of seconds to do that. Next question. All students with disabilities are required to have special education plans. Is that true or is that false? Next question. Schools have up to 30 days to complete an evaluation for special education eligibility. Schools have up to 30 days to let you know whether or not your child is qualified to receive those special education services. Is that true or is that false? And next question. Eligible children with special needs can receive special education services at birth. So if you know at birth that your child has special needs and they're eligible to receive special services, can they receive those at birth? That's the question. Is that true or is that false? They can receive services at birth. Okay, let's go on to question number 5. An advocate can do what an attorney can do. So basically, I'm saying an advocate and an attorney are equal. Is that true or is that false? All right. So at this point, you've answered all your questions. I'm going to go back through these questions and I'm going to tell you the actual answer. And then I just want you to tally up how many of those that you have correct. That's going to give us our scores, and I'll show you what your score table looks like in just a second. All right, so question number one. I asked the question that there are only two special education plans. The answer to that is actually false. Most people know about two education plans. They know about a Section 504 plan and they know about individualized education plan, the IEP. Those are the two that most people know about. But actually, there are several other types of plans that are available to help students who have special needs. So the answer to that is false. There's more than two types of special education plans, and we'll talk more about that as you get deeper into the training. All students with disabilities are required to have a special education plan. Is that true or false? The answer to that is false. There are so many students who are being served in the education system that have disabilities that really don't need a plan. So, no, students with disabilities are not required to have a plan unless their disability is keeping them from accessing education the way a student would if they didn't have a disability. So, the answer to that is false. Not every student with a disability needs a plan. Now, statement number three, schools have up to 30 days to complete an evaluation to determine if your child is eligible to receive special education services. Up to 30 days. The answer to that is also false, right? According to the law, schools have up to 90 days to complete your evaluations for special education eligibility. Now, if it's a re-evaluation, most places will give up to 30 days, but the truth of the matter is, legally, it says that they have to be re-evaluated in a timely manner. That's what the law says. It doesn't say that it has to be within 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, but schools know that they have to do this without delay. And so in most cases, they do this sooner than later, the reevaluations. But if it's your child's first time being evaluated for services, the law specifically says up to 90 days. So, and I know parents get impatient sometimes because you feel like you've been waiting a long time, but if you haven't had gone through that 90 days of an initial evaluation, you still have more time. And then if it's a reevaluation, you just want to stay on top of that because typically schools usually have what they need. If they need to do another assessment, it shouldn't take them more than necessary, more than a reasonable amount of time according to what the law says. Okay, so again, the answer to that is false. So far, we've got false and false. Next question is, eligible children with special needs can receive special education services at birth. Is that true or false? Right? It sounds like that's not possible, but according to the law, this is actually true, right? It says that students with disabilities or children with disabilities can receive services from 0 to 12th grade to 21, okay? From 0 to 21. So if you have a child who is eligible for special education services, yes, there is a section of the law that says that they can receive services from 0 to 3 and then from 3 to 21. Okay, so that is actually true. And then the last question, an advocate can do what an attorney can do. They're pretty much the same. The answer to that is false. People get confused between what an advocate and an attorney can do and who they are and what their role is. An attorney can do everything an advocate can do, but an advocate cannot do everything an attorney can do because an attorney has specialized training. They carry a heavier burden because of their specialized training. They have special tests that they have to take. They have to be past the bar. So an attorney is quite different than what an advocate can do. Now, as a parent, you are more than capable of being an advocate for yourself and for your child or anyone else if after you go through the training. So we want to make sure that you understand the difference between when you might need an attorney and when you can advocate on your own. Okay, so they're not the same. The answer to that is false. All right. So you've gone through your pre-assessment. And here's your table. And I'm sorry that my camera is over, but I'll just read it to you. If you got 5 out of 5, you're probably pretty knowledgeable about special education. We would consider you to be an expert, not an expert in special education, but definitely an expert at this assessment. You have 5 out of 5. If you got 4 out of 5, we say, hey, you're still pretty savvy. You got some things that you're questioning on, but you've also done pretty good with this assessment. If you got less than 3 out of 5 or 3 or less, then you're a newbie. And hey, no shame in being a newbie. We were all there before, so it's just going to take a little bit more time and we'll have to give you a little bit more information, but you can get exactly where you need to be. Okay, so whether you're an expert, savvy, or you're a newbie, we have something for you. Okay, all right, so let's go on and go to the next slide, and I can tell you a little bit more about what you came here for, those advocacy strategies. All right. So before I talk to you about those strategies, let me talk to you about these definitions because this is very important. And because I want to make sure that my wording is just right, I'm going to grab my notes and I'm going to read to you from my notes. These are the definitions that we're going to use for the sake of this training because these are the definitions that will make the most sense when you're advocating for your child. So when we talk about disability, we're specifically talking about any condition of the mind or of the body that keeps your child or makes it difficult for a person with a condition to do the same activities or interact with the world around them as any other person would. So if you're a child or someone with a disability has a condition where their mind or body is going on, it makes it difficult for them to interact, to do certain activities with the world around them, with their environment, then that's what we would consider a disability, right? Did I say anything about doctors? No, I didn't. Because sometimes the disabilities that people have are not necessarily diagnosed by a doctor. But if that condition is continuing to prohibit them from accessing their environment or their learning, we would consider that a type of disability. Okay. All right. So special education. Special education means that this is designed, especially designed to meet the unique needs of the student or person that has a disability, right? It's a modified or an alternate type of instruction, and it goes beyond what is provided for a traditional student who does not have a diagnosis or a disability, right? The type of instruction will impact things like academics. It will help with behavioral issues, health conditions, physical conditions, and any other special types of supports or services that are needed. So all those types of services and supports that are provided are to help across all those different areas. And it's, like I said, it goes beyond what is provided to a student that doesn't have a disability. That's what we mean by special education. Okay. All right. So now we come to the point where it's time for us to talk about the difference between what we mean when we say advocate and the difference between what we mean when we say advocacy. Okay. And so let's start with advocate. When we talk about advocate for the sake of this training, we're talking about someone who writes, who speaks, or who acts in support or defense of a person or even a cause, right? Characteristics of a good advocate are people who are empowering. They empower others. They are flexible because we all know that change has to take place and you can't change something without bending or moving or being flexible, right? You have to be caring and compassionate because you have to see things from the other person's perspective and point of view to be able to properly advocate. And then you need to be goal oriented. You can't just be out here doing whatever. You have to know what it is that you're trying to do and be clear about your goal because it'll make it easier for you to attain the goal. So when we talk about an advocate, we're talking about a person. We're talking about someone who acts, who writes, who speaks in support or defense of another person, just like a parent. Like you're a parent and you speak, act, or write in defense of your child or in defense of what your child needs. I'm an advocate. I speak, act, and I write in defense of underrepresented people and people who are marginalized for what they need in support of them, me, because I'm one of those people, right? Okay, so I consider myself to be an advocate. I consider you to be an advocate. But how is being an advocate different from advocacy? Advocacy is actually the art. I'm not even going to call it the act. I'm going to call it the art of helping other people find their voices. That's what I do. An advocate is who I am, but what I do is I do advocacy. I help other people find their voices and I help other people in all different types of ways. There's all different types of advocacy, but for the sake of this training, what I'm going to focus on is self advocacy, teaching you to speak up for yourself and find your voice for yourself and your needs, individual advocacy, because you're doing that also for your child. And at some point during our training, we also teach you how to help your child become an advocate, because self advocacy is so important, especially as they grow older. Then we're going to talk about systems advocacy, because special education is a system, and the system can work when the people work it. So we have to advocate for better systems for special education. All right. So that's the difference between advocacy is what we do and an advocate is who we are. Okay. All right. So now that we've gotten through the definitions and you know your pre-assessment, you know where you are, let's dive into those four C's of advocacy. Those are the toolkits, the things that you're going to need to know. So if you haven't already, get your paper and pencil together, go get your toolbox and get ready to put some things in that toolbox. All right. So we're ready to put tool number one into the box. Tool number one is connection. Okay. And oftentimes when we talk about connection, people think very linear, but I want you to think of a broader definition of connection. When we talk about connection, we're specifically talking about relationships. It is so much easier to get what you need accomplished when we work together. Yes, you can go and you can crusade all on your own. But when you have a team of people working with you and when you develop a connection and a relationship with people, it makes your job so much better. It makes your results so much better. So when we talk about connection, we're talking about relationships. Your first relationship is with yourself. So we talked to you a little bit about what is it that's going on that's keeping you from feeling like you can't accomplish what it is that you need. Sometimes it's just a mindset thing or things that you need to do within yourself. But your relationship needs to also extend out to your child, and it needs to extend out to the teachers and the other people who support your child. You know that expression, it takes a village to raise a child, that African proverb? That is true. And we firmly believe that the connections that we build, the relationships that we build need to be healthy relationships, because it's so much easier to go to a person to talk about things or to work with a person that you actually get along with, that you actually have a basis and an understanding. So the first thing that you're going to need to get into your advocacy toolbox is connection. Build connections with the teachers and with the service providers, with your child, because children can tell you what they need, but sometimes they need someone to help speak what they need to the other people, like their teachers and to their service providers. So once you have that relationship with your child, then you can extend that relationship to the teachers and other people who work with your child. And through that, you'll have this village of people who have a foundation of relationship that are working together to accomplish what you set out to do for your child, what needs to be done for your child based on what they need. So make sure in your advocacy toolbox you have connection or you have relationship. And then I also want to say before we go from this section that even though you have to build that connection, we didn't you, there may you're probably wondering like, how in the world can I do that? I've been trying to do that, but it's just not working out. We do have tips for that. I don't have time to get into the tips for this particular training, but I'm going to tell you where we can get deeper into talking about how to build those meaningful connections and relationships that you can build on to help your child. Okay, so put that in your toolbox. Number one, check connection. Okay, so we've got connection out of the way, your relationships. Advocacy tool number two is communication. And I mentioned this a little bit when we talked about number one. I talked to you about how much how much easier it is when you want to go to a person and you have something that you need to say that may be difficult to say. But if you have built a relationship, if you set the foundation for a strong relationship, you feel more comfortable going to people and learning and speaking your truth, right? Communication is so important. And there's two types of communication. There's the communication that we give, which is our expressive communication. And then there's the communication that we receive, which is our receptive communication. All the time when we're communicating, when we're talking to each other, the information is going through filters. And what we work on is how to teach you to hear what's really being said and how to say what you really mean. Communication is so important, not just for advocates, it's just important in general. It impacts so many other areas of our life. But when you're an advocate, you have to be clear about what it is that you have as your expectations, what are your hopes, what are your goals, how you're going to get there. Communication is an ongoing thing. It doesn't just end when you build that relationship and start talking. It goes beyond the high and by of a situation. It's everything that goes between the high and by. And so we teach you how to communicate without the filters, how to say what you really mean, and how to hear what is really being said so that you can get to the root of the issue and you can build a true solution for that. Okay. So communication is your tool number 2. Make sure you put communication in your toolbox. Okay.
Hey there, it's Dr. Rolanda from Bright Idea, and I want to thank you so much for tuning into our video today. If you've enjoyed what you've seen so far and you want more of where this came from, guess what? You're in luck. This is only the beginning, so make sure you're subscribed and make sure your notifications are turned on. That way, when we drop the next section of this video, you'll be one of the first to know. Thanks for tuning in and thanks for being a member of Bright Idea.